Imagine this. A young woman begs, "Please don't touch me," but a man ignores her plea. The next day, 300 fierce warriors show up for her.
Death.
No ordinary event. It means something huge is about to go down. Let me tell you the story of Silas Ward, who learned this lesson the hard way. Silas woke up to the endless thump of horse hooves shaking his trading post like an earthquake. Bottles rattled on the shelves as he stumbled to the window, still fuzzy from last night's drinking. Figured maybe a dozen riders at most, but nope, the whole horizon was packed with them. They sat super still on their horses, lined up perfectly, stretching way out of sight. No war paint, no weapons up, just this heavy, scary silence. Right in the middle, an older guy with silver braids stared at Silas's door like a rock that wouldn't budge. But get this, it made no sense at all. Yesterday, that girl had begged him not to touch her, saying those words in shaky English while backing into his storage room. She seemed like just another native person looking for work. Nothing special. He'd grabbed her wrist, made her stay, and forced her to stack his stuff, even though she was crying. It was just business to him, nothing big. That's why we're all these warriors here. And when Silas looked closer, each one had something small and white tied to their saddle, looked like bones. The girl was gone, but on his doorstep was a single eagle feather, placed just right, like in a ceremony. Silas knew enough about the territory to get that feathers weren't random, they were messages. We just couldn't figure out what message 300 armed guys were sending, or why grabbing a girl's wrist broke some secret rule. The day before, Silas thought he was the smartest guy around. His trading post was at the spot where 3 trails met, so everyone needing supplies had to deal with him. Set the prices, made the rules, and took whatever he wanted. That morning, she walked in like any customer, a young native woman, about 20, with long black hair and a braid and a worn-out dress. She moved carefully, not touching stuff, looking at his goods like she had hardly any money. Silas watched from his counter, thinking it over. She was alone, which was weird to native. Women usually had family or tribe folks with them. She kept glancing at the door like waiting for someone, but nobody came. "You need work?" he called out, not really asking. She turned, and he saw fear in her dark eyes, but something else, too, like she recognized him already. "I can pay," she said quietly, holding up a small leather pouch for flour, sugar, medicine. But Silas was already coming around the counter. He'd been alone at the post for 3 months, and seeing a young woman stirred up something hungry inside. Him business was slow, and he was tired of taking orders from riders passing through. Here was someone he could control. "Work's easier than coin," he said, getting closer. She backed toward the wall, her fear getting sharper. "Please, I have money. I just need." "Please don't touch me," she whispered when he reached for her arm. The word stopped him for half a second. There was something super desperate in her voice, more than normal fear. But Silas had been drinking since noon, and the whiskey made him bold in the wrong ways. He grabbed her wrist anyway, felt her try to pull away, saw tears start in her eyes. "You'll work," he said, dragging her to the storage room. "Few hours, then you can buy whatever you need." She didn't fight him, which surprised him. Just went still and quiet, like an animal pretending to be dead. But when he looked at her face, he saw something that should have scared him bad. Not giving up, not beaten acceptance. Like she'd been waiting for this her whole life. Like everything. Next was already set before he even grabbed her. Hours later, after she'd stacked his goods and swept his floors without a word, she asked a question that chilled his blood. "Do you know my father's name?" Silas laughed hard at that, belly hurting, whiskey tears on his cheeks. "Sweetheart, I don't know any of your people's names. You all look the same to me." She didn't react to the mean words, just stood there with a sack of flour, waiting for him to stop laughing. When it got too quiet, Silas wiped his eyes and tried to see her clearly through the booze fog. "Why would I care about your daddy? 'Cause tomorrow you will meet him." The way she said it stuck, his laugh in his throat. Not a threat, not a promise, just a fact, like the sun rising or winter coming. "Is that supposed to scare me?" Silas grabbed his bottle, needing a drink to chase away the weird chill. She tilted her head, looking at him with eyes that saw too much. You drink because you are lonely. You touch women because you are weak. You take what is not yours because you believe no one will stop you. Each word hit like a punch, not because they were mean, but because they were true. Who the hell are you? My name is Ayana, she said, cutting him off. It means eternal blossom in my people's tongue. My father chose it because he said I would outlive everything that tried to destroy me. Something in her voice made Silas put down his bottle. The way she said her name with respect and pride, like it meant something big to important people. Ayana, she repeated, watching his face. Daughter of Crowfeather, chief of the Mountain Wind tribe. The blood left Silas's face. Every trader in the territory knew that name. Crowfeather controlled the northern passes, decided which caravans lived or vanished in the mountains. He was the one guy even the army didn't mess with directly. You're lying. When I was 7, Ayana kept going like he hadn't spoken. A white settler grabbed my sister, used her, threw her away like refuse. My father took 300 warriors and burned his homestead to ash. The man begged for mercy, promised money, offered horses. My father gave him the same mercy the man had shown my sister. Silas's hands started shaking. He reached for his gun, but Ayana just shook her head sadly. Violence will not help you now. You have already broken the sacred law. What sacred law? I just made you work. I didn't. To touch the unmarked daughter of a chief without permission is to claim her as your woman. You have declared yourself my husband in the eyes of my people. The words hit Silas like a slap. His legs gave out and he fell onto a wooden crate behind the counter. That's not, I didn't know. I was just ... My father taught me that ignorance is not innocence. Man who acts without knowledge of consequences must still pay for what he destroys. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. But under that, on the evening air, came another sound. Something that made Ayana smile for the first time since she got there. The distant thunder of horses coming closer. The thunder got louder as it got dark, but it wasn't from storm clouds. Through his window, Silas saw torches pop up on the horizon like fallen stars moving in perfect lines across the valley. The hoofbeats echoed off the canyon walls, getting bigger until the ground shook. Ayana stood by the door now, not the scared girl anymore. She was straight and calm, like she'd waited her whole life for this. Every few minutes, she'd tilt her head to the sound and nod, like counting something only she heard. How many? Silas asked, his voice cracking. 300, as tradition demands. For what? For touching your arm. That's insane. Ayana turned to him, and in the lamplight, she looked different treacle. Like from old bloodlines and ancient rules white folks never learned. You did not just touch my arm, she said quietly. You declared ownership. In my culture, when an unmarked woman is seized against her will by a man from outside the tribe, it is either marriage or war. There is no middle ground. Silas fumbled. For his rifle, checking it with shaky hands, then I'll fight. I'll show them they can't just ... with what? 6 bullets against 300 warriors. Ayana shook her head. My father brings enough men to witness, not to battle. This is ceremony, not war. Ceremony for what? Before she could answer, the hoofbeats stopped. The quiet was worse than the noise. Silas peeked out and saw them in the moonlight, a sea of riders going beyond his lamp's light. They sat like statues, waiting. One rider broke off and came to the post. Even in the dark, Silas saw the man's huge build, silver braids shining, horse following every tiny move. This had to be Crowfeather. The chief got off his horse and walked to the door with steady steps. He didn't knock or yell, just waited. Like he had forever. What does he want? Silas whispered. Ayana was already grabbing the door handle. To offer you a choice? What choice? She paused, hand on the wood, and looked back with maybe pity. Honor the marriage you created, or face the justice you've earned. The door opened, and Crowfeather stepped in. Up close, he was scarier tall. As a tree scars telling stories of wins and beaten enemies. His dark eyes locked on Silas like pinning a bug. When he spoke, his voice was heavy like mountains. You touched my daughter. It wasn't a question, it was already decided. Silas tried to explain it was a mix-up, but words stuck under that stare. The chief filled the doorway like a storm, and behind him, the night had the quiet breaths of 300 horses and creaking saddles. "I didn't know," Silas finally said. "I didn't know she was your daughter. I didn't know about your laws." Crowfeather stepped in fully, moving without a sound. Everything about him was precise and deadly, from his shoulders to his steps. "Ignorance," the chief said slowly, "is the excuse of children and cowards. Which are you?" Ayanna stood by her father, and Silas saw they looked alike, same proud way, same stare that saw through you. She whispered in their language, and Crowfeather nodded. "My daughter tells me you were drinking when you seized her, that you forced her to work against her will, that you ignored her pleas." Each word hit hard. "Is this true?" Silas looked around his store for an escape that wasn't there. His rifle was useless against the wall. The back door led to open land with 300 warriors. He was stuck, and they all knew it. It wasn't. I just needed help with the store. It was business. Business. Crowfeather said it like it tasted bad. "You call forced labor business? Call seizing a woman against her will business?" He stepped closer. "Tell me, traitor, what business gives a man the right to ignore a woman's tears?" The question hung there like smoke. Silas had no good answer. It would just show what he really was, a drunk who took stuff because he could. "In your world, Crowfeather went on, perhaps such things go unpunished. But you touched the daughter of a chief. By our law, you have claimed her as your bride. This makes you my son, whether you intended it or not." Silas felt a tiny hope. Soon law sounded better. Then we can work this out. I can make amends. Pay compensation." Crowfeather's face stayed the same. "A son who dishonors his family brings shame on all who share his name. In our tribe, shame is cleansed only through blood or exile." The hope died fast. "What does that mean?" "It means," Ayanna said quietly, "that you must choose. Prove yourself. Worthy of being my husband, through trial by combat, or leave this territory forever and never return." Outside, like called by her words, drums started beating deep and old, shaking the walls. The ceremony was starting, ready or not. The drumming got louder, with voices chanting in a language Silas didn't know. Through the window, he saw warriors get off horses and form a circle around the post. Each had weapons, but held them loose. Like for a ritual, not killing something way more serious. Crowfeather pointed to the door. "Come. The tribe waits to see what manner of man claims their chief's daughter." Silas's legs felt wobbly. "What if I choose exile? What if I just leave? Then you run like a coward, and my daughter's honor remains stained by your touch forever." The chief's voice was flat fact. "She will be marked as the woman no man would fight for, will never marry, never bear children, never take her rightful place in the tribe." Ayanna stepped up, speaking to Silas directly for the first time since her dad came. "You have already changed my life forever. The question now is whether you will destroy it completely or find the courage to face what you have done." "I'm not a fighter," Silas said, desperate. "I'm a trader. I sell goods. I don't know how to use weapons properly." "Then you should have thought of that before you seized the chief's daughter," Crowfeather said. "But our law is not without mercy. You may choose your trial." "What does that mean?" Ayanna translated her dad's words from their language. "Traditional combat with blades, or the test of endurance. In the test of endurance, you must survive 3 days and nights in the wilderness, with nothing but the clothes on your back. Return alive, you prove yourself worthy. If you die, the debt is paid." Silas looked at them, hunting for kindness in their faces. None there. These folks lived by old codes white men ignored, laws older than governments. "And if I win, if I survive, then you become my husband," Ayanna said simply. "You leave your old life behind and join our tribe. You learn our ways, follow our customs, and prove every day that you deserve the honor you claimed through force." The weight crushed Silas. No escape without losing everything. Fight and die. Run and ruin her life as a coward. Survive the test and lose his freedom. But looking at Ayanna in the light, he saw something that stopped his panic. She wasn't happy. About this, Not mad or out for revenge. She looked almost sad, like watching a guy realize too late what his choices caused. "Why?" he asked her. "Why didn't you fight back? Didn't you tell me who you were?" "Because," she said quietly, "wanted to see what kind of man you truly were. My father taught me that a person's character is revealed not by their strength, but by how they treat those who cannot fight back." Outside, the chanting got super loud and Crowfeather grabbed the door. The tribe grows restless. Must choose now, or they will choose for you. Silas closed his eyes, knowing his next choice would decide if he lived or died as a man worth respecting. Silas opened his eyes and looked at his hands. The same hands that had grabbed Ayana's wrist without permission. The same hands that had forced her to work while she pleaded with him to stop. For the first time in years, he saw them clearly for what they were. Not the hands of a successful businessman, but the hands of a man who took what he wanted because he could. "The wilderness test," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Crowfeather nodded once as if he'd expected this choice. "You begin at sunrise tomorrow. If you return to this spot, alive and whole, my daughter will be your wife, and you will be my son. And if I don't return, then your bones will teach the coyotes that some debts can only be paid with blood." Ayana stepped closer to Silas. Close. Enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her dark eyes. "You asked me why I didn't fight back. I'll tell you now. Because my grandmother had a vision about this day when I was born. She saw a white man who would touch me without permission. And she saw what would come after." Silas felt his throat tighten. What did she see? She saw two paths. The man would run like a coward, and I would live my life in shame. In the other, he would find courage he didn't know he possessed, and both our lives would be forever changed. The words hit Silas like punches. He'd thought this was all bad luck. Wrong place, wrong time. But Ayana said it was foreseen, his choices waited for, since before he was born. That's impossible. How could anyone know? "My grandmother lived to be 97 years old," Ayana interrupted. "She taught me that the future is not fixed like stone, but flows like water. Every choice creates new currents, new possibilities. Your choice today will determine which future becomes real." Outside, the drumming stopped suddenly. In the quiet, Silas heard his own heartbeat pounding. Crowfeather headed to the door. The time for questions was over. "We will have no weapons," the chief said without turning. "No food, no water, no tools, except your hands and whatever wisdom you possess. The wilderness will test not just your body, but your spirit. Many men enter the sacred grounds. Not all emerge as men." The door opened and cool night air rushed. Beyond, Silas saw the circle of warriors in the moonlight. Each face painted with white and red patterns like war and death symbols. But their looks had no hate, just serious, like watching an old ritual. Ayana went to a wooden chest in the corner and pulled out something wrapped in soft deerskin. She unwrapped it carefully, showing a small carved bone on a leather cord. "This belonged to my grandmother," she said, coming to Silas. "She wore it through 77 winters, and it never failed to bring her home." She held it out. "If you truly wish to prove yourself worthy, you will earn the right to wear it." Silas stared at the simple necklace, getting that she was giving him more than protection, a chance to be better. But first, he had to survive 3 days in land that killed tougher guys. The sun was just up when Crowfeather took Silas to the edge of the sacred area. The chief pointed to jagged peaks, like broken teeth against the sky. Between here and there were miles of desert, rocky canyons, and wild land that took lives of good hunters. "You go alone from here," Crowfeather said. "Follow the old deer trails north until you reach the circle of standing stones. Touch the center stone with your bare hand, then return." 3 days. 3 nights. Silas looked at his soft trader clothes and city boots, knowing they'd fall apart fast. "What if I get lost?" "Then you die lost." The chief's face softened. "Tiny bit, but if you truly wish to earn my daughter's respect, you will find your way. Fear makes men weak. Purpose makes them strong." With that, Crowfeather got on his horse and rode back to camp, leaving Silas alone with just his clothes and the heavy choices on him like the hot sun. The first day, almost killed him. His boots rubbed blisters that popped and bled. His throat burned thirsty by noon, and he wasted time hunting water instead of going forward. When night came, he huddled by a boulder, shaking as it got 40 degrees colder than day. But something happened that first awful night. As Silas lay there, hearing coyotes howl, he thought about Ayana's face when she begged him not to touch her. The real fear in her eyes, how she went still when he grabbed her, like a trapped animal. For the first time as a grown-up, Silas felt real shame for what he'd done. The second day was worse. His lips cracked and bled. His hands got torn from sharp rocks. But he kept going north, pushed by something stronger than his hurts. Every step to the peaks was a step from the guy who'd forced a woman to work. On the second night, he found water in a small spring between boulders. As he drank carefully, he thought about taking things for granted: water from his well, food from shelves, power over weak folks. The third day started clear and cold. Silas topped a ridge and saw them far off, 7 old stones in a perfect circle, each taller than a man. They looked like guards over the valley, older than settlements, older than laws except heart ones. He reached the circle as the sun hit the west horizon.
Oh, yeah.
The center stone was smooth granite, worn by tons of hands. When Silas touched it, the cool felt good on his hot skin. Now the hard part. 3 days back with no food, just water he could find.
Oh.
Silas collapsed at the trading post right as the sun set on the third day. His clothes were rags, face burned dark, hands cut so bad they left blood on the steps. But he was alive and changed. Crowfeather and Ayana were waiting. The chief knelt and checked his wounds like a warrior who'd seen this before. "You look like death," Crowfeather said. But there was something new in his voice, maybe respect. "I feel worse than death," Silas croaked through cracked lips. "But I made it. I touched the stone." Ayana brought water, holding his head as he drank slow. "Tell me what you learned out there." Silas looked up, and she saw his eyes were different arrogance. Gone, burned off by facing death. Instead, something like humility or starting wisdom. "I learned that I've been taking things that weren't mine my whole life," he said quietly. "Water, food, safety, your dignity." He tried to sit up, hurting as his hands pushed on the steps. "I learned that being strong enough to take something doesn't mean you deserve to have it." Crowfeather stood and got a bundle from his saddlebag's clean clothes and soft deerskin moccasins. "These belong to my younger brother," the chief said. "He died fighting to protect our winter camp from raiders. He was a good man who understood that true strength comes from protecting others, not dominating them." Silas took the clothes with shaky hands. "I'm honored, but I need to ask you both something." He looked at them. "I know I have to marry Ayana now. I know that's the law, but I need her to know that I'll spend the rest of my life earning the right to call myself her husband. I'll never again take something from her that she doesn't freely give." Ayana was quiet a bit when she spoke her. The voice was steady, but not mean. "You have proven you can survive in the wilderness. Now you must prove you can survive in a marriage built on respect instead of force." "I'll learn your language," Silas said, "your customs, your ways of seeing the world. I'll work every day to become the kind of man who deserves to stand beside a chief's daughter." Crowfeather nodded slow. "Words are wind until they become actions. But you have taken the first step on a very long path." He got on his horse and looked down. "The ceremony will be held when the moon is full. Until then, you will live with our people and prove that your transformation is real, not just something you wear like new clothes." As the chief rode off, Ayana helped Silas stand. He was weak and hurt, but for the first time since she came in, he looked at her with real respect. "I know I can't erase what I did," he said, "but I promise you this. Every day for the rest of my life, I'll try to be worthy of the second chance you've given me." Ayana nodded, and in her eyes he saw not love, but something that might grow. Into it, given time and patience, and the daily choice to be better than he'd been before. If you enjoyed this story, click the video on your screen now to watch another unforgettable Western tale where honor and redemption collide in the unforgiving frontier. Don't forget to subscribe and consider a super chat to help us keep bringing you more stories like these. Your support means everything too.